Today I'll show you how to create this team section inside of HTML and CSS. And this team section is also responsive, which means once you shrink the screen, items are basically going to wrap into the next line. Once you keep shrinking, the items are going to keep wrapping into the next line, and you can also use it on mobile, as you can see right here. Now let's start to create the team section. So first of all, we are obviously going to create a section that includes the content for our team, and we can use some of the classes I've already created, like the padding. I'm going to search for it, padding or dot padding section class that gives a padding of top of 80 pixels and a padding of bottom of 80 pixels. I'm going to copy and paste this class in here. Now we have 80 pixels top, 80 pixels bottom, and this is what our section looks like. We can also just copy an H2 from the stuff that we've already done just to get a cool heading. Basically, this is our card section container, but I'm going to probably copy this H2 right here and I'll paste it into our section. And this one has the class font LG, so basically large font, and center, which centers the text. So now we have this heading here. Next up, we again want to create a div that basically has a team member inside of it. So I'm going to give it a class of team minus member probably. And inside of here, I'll have an image. That image is going to link to the images folder and say, okay, let's get profile 1. And down there, I'm going to use H3 and I'm going to give her a name. Maybe this is Catherine, whatever. And now once I save, we basically have this girl and Catherine, whatever is her name. So next up, let's go ahead and say that we have a paragraph below and maybe she's the head CEO or whatever. So now it looks like this. Still looks pretty bad, so I'm going to add a class that says circle. We don't have this class yet, so I have to create this class. I'm going down and I'm going to create dot circle as a class, which has a border radius of 50%. Once I save the document, and I'm going to save the style sheet as well, we should actually see that change, but it doesn't happen because I have this dot circle class applied to our div, which obviously doesn't make sense. I need to apply it to our image, and now we have this circular image, if you want to say so. So now let's also use the direction of flex and flex column, and let's use items or align items center, for example, to center our items. And now we have this effect. Let's take a look at items center. Items center basically just aligns our items to the center. And now we obviously need to create a width for our image. So let's say profile is another class, and let's go to dot profile. We got to scroll pretty much here. And once we are at the bottom, we are going to create dot profile as a class, and we say we want to have a width of 250 pixels, for example. So now we have this card, if you want to say so. And obviously it would be cool if this one would be slightly bigger and this one would be slightly smaller. So we can go to our font section, dot font, and we have font medium that gives us a font size of 20 pixels. So we could, for example, use font minus medium for our H3, and now we have this slightly bigger font. And we could also create a font minus SM for small class that has probably a font size of 15 pixels. And now we're going to use font SM for the class down below. Now we have this effect, and now we maybe want to have some margin on the top by giving our heading an M2 of 20 pixels. We're going, whoops, this one is obviously the wrong thing. Okay, we have a class already. That was my bad. We're going to use MT of 2. Now we have this margin to the top, and maybe MT of 1 is already enough. So this is the effect we have now. Obviously you can create cooler cards if you want to, but I think this looks pretty much alright to me. So now I'm going to create some more team members, since obviously most websites have more than one person inside of the team. So let's say we have 2 more team members. Let's say one of them is profile 1, one of them is profile 2, one of them is profile 3, one of them is profile 4. And this is Max Big, this is Brian Chat, and this is whatever. And now we have those 4 guys, and all of them can be head CEO. One of them could, for example, also be designer. One of these guys could be burger maker, and the last one could be I don't know. Last one could be sprinter, for example, for whatever reason. But yeah, you can make whatever you want. And now we obviously need to create a grid to have those items inside of a grid to make them mobile friendly and to display them next to each other. And we are going to do the same we've done a couple of times already. We are going to create a div. Instead of this div, we'll have our items, and we give this div the class of grid and the class of grid auto. And to remind you again, our class.grid creates display of grid, and grid minus auto creates grid template columns, repeat, auto fit, min max, 250 pixels, 1FR. So if space is available, it will take up the available space. If you shrink the window, once the item reaches 250 pixels or below, it's basically going to wrap the next items into the next row. So this basically makes everything mobile friendly again. And now we have those items next to each other. So now we have those items basically aligned next to each other. Obviously, if I'm going to shrink the window, you can see that it will shrink them as well. And once they reach a certain width, they are going to wrap into the next line. And same goes for the other one. And obviously this doesn't look perfect right now because it's responsive, but it's responsive and looks terrible. So let's also add a gap of 3, for example, which is a gap of 30 pixels between our items. So once we shrink now, we basically get this gap between the items, which looks a lot better already. And one thing I also want to add is a margin between heading and those items. And maybe a margin of 80 pixels would look pretty cool or pretty good. So let's say right here we also have MT of 8, for example. So 80 pixels. And now we have this margin. And this is what our teams could look like, but I also think it would be cool if it would just take up 80% of the entire width and not 100%. So what we can do in order to do so is we create another wrapper container. Instead of this wrapper container, we have our entire content. We say that this grid just has a width of 80% by using W minus 80, which says width 80%. And now again, we use a class of flex of justify of center again to center this 80% pixel container, 80% container in the center of the screen. So let's take a look at this. And this is what it looks like. And I think this looks a lot better already. And this is how you create this kind of team section in HTML and CSS.